Hello, Homebrewed Christianity listeners. This is Tripp, and I'm sitting here through the magic of the interwebs talking to my friend Ryan Parker. What's up?
Hey, Tripp. It's great to be with you.
Oh, it's so good to be with you. You know what? We're friends. And you know what friendship is?
Buying beer for each other?
No, it's the main character in the movie I'll Push You. Come on, this is a podcast intro.
Duh.
And in just a little bit, you're going to hear Nathan interview Patrick and Justin, who are the main characters in the film, and Terry and Chris were the people behind the plan and production of said movie. But before we do that, I'm talking with Ryan because I'm a loser and live on the East Coast now, so I did not get to go to the screening and do the interview in person.
Well, you're not a loser, but you do live on the East Coast.
I am, and they're the two things I need to say in the intro. But number one, even though I'm a loser now and live on the East Coast, now people on the East Coast feel like I'm judging them. It's just because
it's kind of implied.
It is, but a part of it is attachment to certain sports teams. So the lack of sleep with the Lakers starting and the World Series going on with the Dodgers in it, if you have to watch all the Laker and Dodger games, it's like you're up to one, but then you still have some work you need to do. So then you do that, you fall asleep. But then the kids get up because they want to go to school and stuff. And you're like, I slept 4.5 hours.
This is why you should homeschool.
That is exactly what the world needs.
I was on, well, I would trust you as a homeschool teacher over like probably 99.99999% of the population. I was on the East Coast last week teaching a course in Pennsylvania. And it was NBA tip-off week, as you well know.
Oh, I know.
And my Warriors didn't start until like 10:30 at night. I was like, what is this madness? But you're up till 1:30 at least, right?
I know. Luckily, you had Swaggy P because...
he hit a couple of threes.
He hit a few threes. He was like, so you're telling me there are NBA teams good enough that, like, I'm not the best scorer?
You mean to tell me I can just come off the bench and just hit a couple of shots? Yeah. I don't have to carry a team?
Yeah, so before it turns into my new podcast, Tripp talks about the NBA, which Twitter has been taunting. They said, Tripp, when are you starting an NBA podcast?
You need that podcast. That would be awesome. And I know tons of people that could be on it.
I know.
And they could also talk religion, theology, and philosophy with you.
With analogies to the NBA. So, yes, I'm on the East Coast. And this movie's about friendship. I got derailed. Oh, yeah. I was saying, if you enjoy this podcast, probably podcasts that I don't get distracted by Ryan on the intro, better than so far this one. Luckily, we can't ruin that Nathan did a good job doing the interview. But if you want to support the podcast, become a member. Go to homebrewedcommunity.com. And those wonderful people that are members are the ones that donate each month. They're part of the secret Facebook group and join all the online classes and such. And Ryan heard, but I'm not telling everyone yet, the secret Advent class.
It's going to be awesome.
Oh,
I can't say anything about it.
I know, but it's...
And hey, also for your secret members, or for your members, and in that secret group, they can find out about free film screenings.
Oh, yeah, that is true. Sometimes members, you get a little message in there. It's like, do you live in this city and want to go see a really sweet film? Then holler back, and you can get some tickets. And which on November 2nd, what kind of film screening should people be considering doing?
I mean, if I were a movie lover and had the time, or even if I didn't have the time, I would make the time to go check out this new film called I'll Push You.
Mm-hmm. And it's on November 2nd. How would they find out about said?
You can Google I'll Push You Fathom Events. It's on November 2nd at 7:30 p.m. all times local in over 570 theaters. So even if you live on the East Coast, even if you live in the Midwest, guess what?
It's at 7:30.
Probably a theater near you at 7:30 your time, and you can go check it out.
So, the I'll Push You is a great film, and now if you watch it late at night after the Dodgers are securing spots in the playoffs and you're already a bit emotional, and then you watch I'll Push You, there's a high likelihood you will cry.
There's a high likelihood that at any point in your life, or during the day, when this thing is made available digitally, if you watch it in the future, that you're just going to cry. Even if you've seen it 4 or 5 times like I have, there are moments that still, it gets a little dusty.
So what's the lowdown? I'll push you. Like, what are the parts of it that, or the selling points that when you saw it, Ryan said, I want to help make sure this movie happens, gets out. I want to be supportive, that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I think if you don't, I mean, I can back up that what really helps set the story is how we came to find the film. Mm-hmm. And so, so as you know, and I've been on the show a couple of times, people know I work in film marketing, and basically we try to, really at the end of the day, my hope is that we put good content in front of the right audience early. So people are talking about it. They're encouraging their communities to go see it. And most of the time, a great majority of the time is content that I really believe in, that I think is really good. And, even when I was working on my PhD in film, I was always wanting to see stuff early because it felt like the people that had early access to films and that were talking about them weren't doing so from a very progressive, thoughtful, faith place. Right. And so for me personally, I like to see when kind of progressive thinkers and writers and bloggers have access to content and the types of narratives they want to shape. So, been working in that space for a few years now, and we're also there was an article about us in the New York Times about the company that I work with. And, that came out December of last year, I think it was. Well, when that article came out, as you can imagine, our work inbox started filling up with requests from people who had projects that they were trying to get out to the marketplace, to try to market better. And most of those were scripts. Most of those were films that were in production. And we're just not, quite frankly, we're not equipped to make a movie ourselves or to co-fund a movie. But there were a couple of people who sent us completed projects. And one of those was this film, I'll Push You. And, they were looking for distribution, basically a way to get their film out into theaters. And so I watched it, and I knew about 5 minutes in that this was something special, that this was something different. And it's a documentary, which can often be hard sells, right? Because most documentaries are depressing, and they're telling you about crises or situations that are just, quite frankly, really depressing. But this wasn't that. This had a story, or has a story, that is extremely uplifting in all the best ways. It hits all these emotional notes that you've talked about already. And it just felt like, and it's only gotten worse, but when I watched it, it was probably January, the inauguration hadn't happened, and things have only gotten more divisive since then. And this film just feels like it was the kind of story that we needed, and the lessons that we need to be reminded of. And it just felt like a real antidote to that. So we've been working with the producers and directors of the film to help them, kind of get the film out there. And it ended up as going to be part of this. And a lot of people have probably seen stuff like this before, but these kind of massive one night only theatrical events. And so, like we said, that'll be on November 2nd at 7:30. And it'll be followed by a recorded conversation between the team behind the film and Grammy nominated singer Billy Gilman. They partnered with the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and they're going to have a conversation after the film about some of the themes around it. And, and then I think around the holidays later this year, early next year, there'll be the film will come out digitally. And so if people, for scheduling purposes or whatever, they'll be able to see it then as well. But for now, the real push, so to speak, is to have people check it out next week.
So I thought, in talking to you about it, I picked 3 kind of themes or moments in the movie that just one of them would make you want to go see the movie. But then I thought, no, that would be one thing. You're just telling people the movie. But what would I do if I was going to use the movie at a high school youth retreat, and you're using this scene as tearjerker moment for Come to Jesus? That's what, because the story is so good. So, like, what are those points where you're like, oh, junk, I didn't expect that? Because here's what the movie doesn't do. It is a story of 2 friends on a spiritual a spiritual, they're doing the hike, which in and of itself is a historic.
Yeah, they're
hike.
doing the Camino. Yeah, they're doing the Camino de Santiago, which most people, what's been surprising for me, just to jump in, is how many people have done or know someone who's been on that pilgrimage, and not just Catholic people either. Mm-hmm. So it's this 500-mile journey across northern Spain that, like you said, Tripp, people have been doing for thousands of years, right?
Yeah, and it's not like that's not the main part of the story. And it's also, the main part isn't, it's a friend who has a friend with a disability, and so they're helping them, kind of, and that's the main part of the story. The main character really is their friendship. And so if you really like The Lord of the Rings, this is like a documentary of Sam and Frodo.
Yeah.
Except you actually have like excerpts of what's going on in Sam's head when he's super pissed and frustrated, and when he's like being reminded of the friendship in the past. And you have flashbacks where Frodo's like, we were friends before there was this ring and this burden and this thing, and we've been thrown here. And there are places in Sam and Frodo's journey where you're like, why the hell are they laughing? Do you see the towers right up there? And they're like, oh, no, biscuits. And jump. Yeah. And in here, they'll like have moments where like, where Justin makes a joke about what Patrick's doing and helping him and stuff. And you go, yeah, what to you seems like is the most glaring, obvious thing. Like, one friend is dragging his other friend around or whatever, and you're like, oh, he's so nice, or this is such a big deal. To them, that's like just the context for their relationship and their story. And so it becomes one of those things that I think if you're trying to describe, to a bunch of teenagers who are sitting there with all these people, like, yeah, here's the greatest gift you have as students, is you can become friends with people as teenagers, like they did, Patrick and Justin, and you have no idea what amazing experiences you could have. And this is what happens when you stay friends and you grow and learn to love each other through whatever happens in each other's lives.
That's actually an amazing point that I hadn't thought of, which is why I like it when you watch movies, or that when you and I watch the same movies and get to talk about them, because it also, I hadn't thought about this notion of, because what's the one song that you always sang in youth group growing up? Michael W. Smith, baby.
Friends are friends forever.
Friends are friends forever. That had no context. It had no idea that, hey, guess what? Your friend might be struck with a rare illness, and it's going to change your relationship forever, right? It doesn't also tell you, not that this is part of the movie at all, but, it doesn't, that song doesn't give you context of, hey, your friend may do something that's like real jerky and you're not going to be friends anymore, right? And one of the things I liked about your comment on, that tear jerky Jesus moment, is that this shows you like the come to Jesus moment. This is why you come to Jesus, because this is what community and life looks like when people join together to support each other. So there's some moments in the film that, and without giving too many spoilers, where they break out of just the Justin Patrick friendship, and it shows a larger community coming on to help. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Actually, the third one I was thinking of is, you're right. A number of times they're joined by other people. Some plan, some they meet on the trail, and this type of thing. And I can't remember who says it. I think it was Patrick, but he said that, without a situation where there's this person, Justin, that we love, and his situation, this community wouldn't have been brought together. But the ultimate expression of this community is all of us being here, sharing this experience and this journey. And I like that, because so many times in our families, our groups of friends, our faith communities and stuff, it's usually too much attention, I think, is put on the point of our gathering rather than the actual gathering of people together. Right. So like, oh, well, we're gathering and everything's going towards the Eucharist or something like that. Or we're gathering and it's this birthday party or this. What is captured in the film is just the joy that's contained when you're in a situation, where people's lives and weaknesses and strengths and all those things show up. And it's that ultimate expression of community that in the movement of the of the trip really functions to give Patrick, the one who's doing most of the pushing and the friend, the breakthrough in his own life and stuff. And I just started crying and tweeted while I was watching it about it. And then Patrick saw it on Twitter, and then we started discussing that scene. And I was like, that's one of the, you should just go see it for that one scene. It's so good. But in it, he has this line where he talks about where you get so hung up on everything you're doing around you, from your job, your life, your family, and all this kind of stuff. In any one moment where you suck and you're like, snip at your kid or ignore your partner, or like, just like consume the meal so fast but don't know you're eating, or like you hug someone but don't even pay attention that your hand just held all that kind of stuff. He's like, any one of those moments you can let yourself off. You're like, oh, I was tired, or I was frustrated, or I was distracted. But when you start to realize how many of them are before you, and you go like, though, that whatever that totals up is not who I am, that's not who I want to be. And what has to happen for us to get in a breakdown so you have enough distance from your day to day to go, no, I can give myself compassion on all these individually, but the picture isn't who I want to be. And his whole discussion wrestling with that was just, like a tear jerking experience that became lighthearted because I got tweeted back, and I was like, I really do like you.
I'm telling you, man, you're hitting the nail on the head, because, and another special thing I thought about is that, when you realize, when you watch the film, or if you read the summary of the film and you watch a trailer, you think, oh, this is about this journey, this exterior journey, right? And the challenges that it faced. But what it unlocks internally for both of these guys is something that I think elevated it kind of to another level. And I think you make a great point about this notion of community and of just being together. So this class I was teaching last week was about faith formation in the quote unquote internet world. That's what they named the class. And it was, the goal was to kind of engage these D-Min students to, better, and more richly engage, social media and digital media. And the real fear there, and especially the fear in a lot of their communities, I know a lot of people listening to your podcast probably know some of this as well, is that these spaces, social media or digital media, are kind of taking over and replacing our real lived connections, right? And, what studies show is that that's just simply not true, that they augment rather than replace. And that if you have a thriving kind of in real life community, that it's going to continue to thrive through and because of digital and social media, right? But I think you make up a great point, is that the real threat I think it's a real threat that these new technologies and new forms of media and new forms of communication place on us, is that we don't gather together in community in real life. And that sometimes I think maybe a gift of the church now and into the future is that we create space to be together in person, right? And across generations, right? And potentially across differences. And that act of being together is maybe has some sort of prophetic or spiritual function, right?
Well, in one of the things I think that, being on a 500-mile journey with other people that are on it that you may not have known before, that's similar what it's like to go into a worship service. Like 10 people at the church, you invite to your birthday party and are your friends. The rest of them are these people that you may have canceled each other's votes out. You really don't like their style. They like the part of the worship service you don't like, and all that kind of stuff. And yet you find yourself there, and when done well, because you're sharing that experience, which is about opening yourself up to the transcendent, the sacred God or whatever, then you have these bonds that can happen quicker and support. And it's bonds and stuff over a place that includes, in worship, confession of your own brokenness, and on a trail, your physical limitations. And I think that's the trail actually puts in a place where where Justin, the one who is, in the chair, sees Patrick's physical limitations. And for most of their friendship, as the disease takes hold and starts to affect Justin, Patrick became the one who was the anchor, the rock, the one doing the lifting of his friend and stuff. And on the trail, Patrick ends up unable, to hit there. And so they're mutual shared, knowing the other person has an end and can't do anything, then the community and stuff becomes something really different.
And oddly enough, as you talk about, our places of worship and our faith communities should be places where we can air that brokenness and those limitations, but it's the one place where we hide those the most.
One of the things, and I hadn't thought about this till now, but one of the things that comes up in the movie are there are two different temptations. One is like resisting help that's available to you. And if Justin has this dream to go on this trip, but if you don't accept help, there's no way he's going. Patrick has to be on the trip long enough to be okay receiving help. And I think a lot of times religious communities want you to perform some role of already being whole and complete and perfectly organized, that we actually we go there to practice resisting help and resisting community and care. And the other temptation, I think, is like not letting other people help you, right? You would rather burn out, die out, and you feel shame by letting others help you. And I think it feels like there's a particular resonance here for faith leaders, especially. Yeah. In that regard. Mm-hmm. And I guess the other part of the film that really struck me was Justin's and his wife's discussion over when he got his diagnosis. Like, they were married, children, gets this diagnosis, and he says that you're like, oh, would it be better for my family if I committed suicide? Like, how is this going to impact my wife? She didn't know what she was signing up for.
Yeah.
My kids, all that kind of stuff. Like, I'm the one that's becoming a kid again physically. And here we are trying to take care of kids. And he says something that I think, if you hear it as he's an exception in humanity, you miss the depth of it. But I think it's something all of us have an opportunity to be honest. Like, he says, life is too short to go down that dark hole. If you can see you need to see the light where the darkness is. That's how he ends that reflection.
Yeah.
And I think most humans, if they're honest long enough, have all sorts of darkness, weaknesses, burdens, could be shame or guilt, things you carry, that there's a darkness that can claim your life and make you wonder whether or not you can bless the people around you, that you matter or belong or have a space, that even your partner and your family could be better off without you and stuff. And he wasn't denying the darkness as the reality of the darkness or anything. He recognizes the gift of life and goes, life's too short to go there. And I thought, to me, especially if you're thinking of, if I'm like using as a reflection thing for people who, at a high school youth retreat, the ability to acknowledge the darkness and its reality is the beginning for him of seeing the light and choosing to go towards it.
This is a great point, because to me, you're touching on one of the shortcomings of most, and I wouldn't classify this film as that, which is another reason I liked it so much. But a shortcoming of most faith-based films is that they refuse to kind of realistically acknowledge that darkness that you talk about, right? It's often painted with very broad strokes, or portrayed as what's essentially just bad luck, or, just a problem that can easily be overcome. That if you pray the right prayer, or if you do the right things or say the right things, everything's gonna be okay. I mean, it's basically nothing more than kind of prosperity gospel stuff, right? Mm-hmm. That can't adequately hold space for the darkness in our life that you talk about. right? Because if you don't do that, then whatever light you're trying to shine or whatever light you believe in, it's just, it blinds you, right? You can't see it for what it truly is. And it's not illuminating in a way that I think there have been other films that do that. Speaking of films, but the way that this film does that is that I don't think that darkness goes away.
Yeah.
Right. It's with you all the time, but it's still something against which your life and the light of, if we want to say it, the light of Christ can shine. Right.
And you say like this isn't a normal faith movie. I don't think it's discussed explicitly. Like the way it's edited and things. I was sitting there until you mentioned about the book, a movie, and then I look at other things on the internet about them. I'm like, oh, I guess they are Christian. Like none of it was forceful. That's why I meant like it's Sam and Frodo. Like everyone knows J.R.R. Tolkien was a Christian. He was trying to, but what is the beauty or power of the gospel is the love of friendship.
Yeah.
And, or Harry and friends. I don't know, but
sure.
The thing I thought that, the thing I thought about going to see the film, especially if you get a chance to see it with friends, is most movies, if we're tackling this subject, would have picked the family as the primary place to tell the story, right? Like, a love relationship or whatever. This movie gets the full spectrum of emotions connected to people who choose to be lifelong friends. So like, I remember watching it, and the 3 people I could imagine saying yes to doing that, I texted. And like, if I got in a situation where I needed someone to push my fat ass 500 miles and,
what'd they say?
No, yeah, I'm like, would you do it? The kind of thing, like, and I want to just tell them thank you for that friendship. And, one of the other challenges I think a film puts on you is like, the life, like long time real good friends are worth having because.
And they're hard to have.
Yeah. Especially
you're lucky if you've got 3.
I know that's what when my life, had an upheaval and I was like, oh junk, I'm going to have to drive 2 cars and 2 dogs across the United States. But I had more friends say yes. I texted like 10 people that when I realized what was happening, I had more say yes than I needed. And like, I was sitting there going, oh wow. Like that was about the biggest affirmation of a friendship you get. Like, I will rearrange my time, fly to wherever I need to be or fly home and, spend 4 days driving across the United States with you and your dogs.
Well, and I think you're touching on something that's deeply biblical and gospel centered that we don't often talk about is how often the notion of friends and friendship comes up in Jesus' language, right? Mm-hmm. And especially what we don't see a lot of, and I think we've probably somehow over history distanced ourselves from, are portrayals of male friendship in pop culture. And that was another thing that kind of drew me to this film. And talking to Terry, one of the directors of the film, we began to wonder I'm not saying there's a 1-to-1 correlation at all, but I think it's worth investigating this. Why is it in our country that we have so many mass shootings, often by straight white dudes? And one thing that is often prohibited to them, at least in our pop culture, is like very close male friendship, right? Because if you see that, the automatic reaction by a lot of people would be, oh, well, they're like, it's either gay or it's making a joke about it or whatever in pop culture. Mm. And, just to have close male friendship, it's just not something that we talk about a lot as adults.
Yeah, it's not. And, that's one of the reasons I think, the movie was immediately powerful to me, not just in the storytelling, is that, having friends is awesome. And, is a completely loaded, strong theological statement that we're not going to unpack at all. Jesus was never identified as the Christ outside the context of friendship. There is no Messiah without the disciples. And, at least the synoptic gospels think though. And I find them,
deal with it.
I find them theologically superior.
Deal with it.
So outside the context of community, there is no Christ. And that's, also applicable to your doctrine of God, eschatology, and ecclesiology. So,
book it.
all right. So now that was the world's longest intro for Nathan getting to talk to Terry and Chris and Patrick and Justin about this film. And on November 2nd, I hope you go see it and follow along on Facebook, Twitter, and such. And here's the thing. If you are watching the film and get a little teary-eyed, then you should tweet about it, because I hear if you tweet sophisticated theological commentary on the film, Patrick tweets back.
That's true.
Just saying.
Tripp, I want to thanks for letting me be on here and chat with you. I always like talking movies with you.
Until next time, smoochy boochies, Ryan.
And also with you.
Thanks for hanging out, man.
Hey, thanks for doing this. I mean, I watched the movie earlier this week and really enjoyed it. So, looking forward to talking to you guys about the process and everything. Just so you guys know, like, what I'm bringing into this conversation.
Okay.
My brother is severely disabled. He has cerebral palsy, epilepsy, autism. He's intellectually disabled too. So, I mean, functionally about a year old, maybe mentally.
Okay.
So he's 2 years younger than me. I've grown up with him, helping my mom take care of him and everything. And I've worked directly with him in the group home he was living at for several years, 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
So I'm bringing I just want to let you know, I'm bringing all that into this conversation, into watching this movie. So watching your story has a different meaning for me than it would for maybe someone else who didn't have that experience. So I don't know, like the questions I'm going to ask are very personal in nature, and I hope that's okay.
That's fine. We're open books, man.
Yeah. So one of the first things I noticed was, and I don't know, like maybe you have to tell me like the decisions you guys made and like what you showed in the movie, what you didn't show. So my brother has to use a wheelchair when we go out and do stuff, and that's very difficult. I can't even imagine trying to attempt.
You get it.
I totally get it. And it's hard enough just going down the sidewalk sometimes. You know what I mean? So every time we're out in public and we see someone, either they ignore us, right? They try to look past us because I don't know. Maybe it's like a Midwestern thing. I'm from Ohio. Like it's impolite to stare. You don't want to look at them. You know what I mean? You can't look at someone in the wheelchair.
So I'm going to avoid.
Right. I'm just going to pretend like they're not there.
Aside,
Or the other extreme, I'm going to walk up to this person that I have no idea about. I don't know who this person is. Can I pray for you?
Oh,
Can I pray for you?
Yeah. I get it all the time.
Did you get any of that while you were...
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
On the journey one time in a cathedral, that guy was really persistent. He wanted to...
He really wanted to pray for me. Luckily, I think Joe was telling him in Spanish, we're good. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't recall people coming up and saying, "Can I pray for you?" It does happen to me in my normal life all the time. Like they're going to pray for me. I'm going to have miraculous healing. I'm going to get up and start running marathons, right then and there on the spot.
Right.
I have kind of a double-edged sword when it comes to that. I don't want to go down to it too much, but it's more or less. It does make me a little uncomfortable because I've come to terms with my disability and who I am as an individual, and I'm comfortable with who I am as an individual. So I'm not looking for like some miracle pill to swallow and boom, like good, poof, and the reason why I'm okay with everything is because I wouldn't be here today talking with you if I was just miraculously healed one day and off went back to my quote-unquote normal life of being a designer and doing what I did. And
Yeah.
And I wouldn't trade that for anything. I wouldn't trade the conversations I've had, people I've met, the impact it's had on my wife and my children and my friends. And as you know, and I'm making an assumption here that, your brother's disability impacts you, impacts your family, impacts everyone in whom he comes in contact with.
Yeah.
It's a ripple effect, and most people don't realize that. And, I wouldn't say on the pilgrimage we ran into that, unless you came across...
There was one instance that happened that we didn't get on camera, that we talked about at length. There was, they had gotten in after a long day in the Meseta, and I think, we could have made a film just about accessibility, because there were so many times. But there was that group that was staring at you. And they were just staring.
That was just you and me. There was no film or anything at that point. We were in the middle of nowhere. I forgot about that. Yeah, steering is caring.
It's just staring.
Staring is caring.
So but on the nature of the Camino, though, is that there is a pilgrimage. There is a community of people who are moving along the same sort of trajectory, and I think there was, from the get-go, we right when we got into St. John, one of the first people we met at the St. John Hotel was someone who had read, a posting from Camino Ways, which they had been writing for as they went along. And she's like, I heard about your story. Oh my God, I'm here to meet you. So it kind of had already sort of set up the nature of the Camino, plus the awareness of them doing the journey kind of created a different dynamic than, say, what happens outside the Camino.
My favorite story is, I know you can't do this on a podcast, is when we were in wherever it was, with the guy in the plaza. We're having dinner and he's taking a photo, but then he kind of like...
Oh, it's hilarious.
You can act it out because I can't do it.
But just real
it
brief.
was so funny.
This is 2/3 of the way of the journey, maybe even 3/4. We're having dinner, and it's an intimate conversation. This guy's probably 60, 70 feet away. He's got his camera, and he's just like looking around. He's looking at the sky. Like, there's nothing up there. Dude. And he'd turn and take a quick picture of us, and like nonchalantly walk away, then turn around and take another picture. And it's just because there's an anomaly here. And just to add to your statement about either people come up and like way over the top, I gotta pray for you, whatever, or
feed you,
or feed you, or avoid you, is that there's this one that creates a picture of you're not okay as you are.
Right.
And that is so damaging. So that's one problem with it. The other problem with it is that I want to jump in and pray for you, but I'm not going to take the time to get to know you.
Right. It's just, I'm going to come in, pray, and then boom.
That's done.
That's this.
Did God's work.
Like, when those moments, it almost feels like it's a selfish thing.
Yeah.
You want to pray to make yourself feel good about what you just saw.
Right.
As opposed to taking the time to actually know someone, love them. And when they invite you into that, let's say, hey, could you pray for me on this? That's an entirely different dynamic than, I'm going to pray for you.
Right.
You're going to be healed right now. Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
I've had that.
Yeah.
I've had it all the time.
And that's damaging. Yeah. It's very damaging.
In many different directions.
In many different directions, yeah.
So I feel like the obvious question to follow this up with is one that I get asked a lot. I'm non-disabled, but I am out with my brother frequently, and so I feel like, and my brother cannot speak for himself, mm-hmm. So most of the time I would try to ask the person with the disability, you have an opinion, you tell me what your thoughts are.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my brother cannot do that. But
so you're an advocate on his behalf.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but the question I get asked a lot for him is, well, like, how do I, it's not okay to come up and pray for him, and if it's not okay to like ignore him, like how do I approach someone like that? Like, what do I even do in that situation? And my response is always like, he's just a normal person. Like, you have to treat him like you would anyone else.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's, I don't know if you get this question a lot, but it seems like a very common question to me for people who are starting to become aware that people with disabilities exist and that they have issues that are starting to come in the mainstream. I'm just thinking about like the recent healthcare things and all of the protests that people with disabilities did, the sit-ins and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's starting to become more aware. People are becoming more aware, and the question that they're asking is like, well, what do we do? Like, how do we help? How do we begin? How do we engage? Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you want to say anything, because I imagine a lot of people listening are not going to be super familiar with the issues and perspectives that people with disabilities have.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I just wanted to offer you the chance to like give your thoughts and opinions on this.
Yeah, usually what it is you really hit the nail on the head. We're just people. We just have different circumstances. You probably have struggles and things that you're dealing with. It's just not visible. Mine just happens to be visible. Your brother's happens to be visible. And, it's usually when I get I get into those conversations with complete strangers about, okay, like, how do I, it's this awkward conversation. It's fear-based. Like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. Yeah. So then I kind of go the reactive approach versus being proactive, or the ignoring route, or whatever it might be, because it's just like, it's unfamiliar territory. And, what I usually just try to say to people is, I usually happens when we're checking in, like, on a flight or something like that. Somebody's asking Patrick, I'm right there.
Right, yes.
Like, asking Patrick, how much does his wheelchair weigh? Mm-hmm. I'm like, it weighs 375 pounds. Like, I'm right here.
Right.
And, I think humor can kind of crack that egg a little bit to make somebody at ease, to make them more comfortable. But usually what it is I just try to just educate along the way, because naturally, I can't use my hands.
Yeah.
So people, the natural, in our culture, reach out your hand to extend your hand to shake and greet. I can't do that. So for the longest time, I've had to try to figure out, how do I do that? People start grabbing my hand off my joystick, and my chair's going sideways. I have some really crazy stories that, of very interesting things that people have done because they just, I don't know what to do.
Right.
But usually I have to be proactive in saying, listen, I know this, this may be new territory for you, but this is how, hey, pat me on the shoulder, or, hey, I'll take a hug. Give me a hug, or, just don't touch my joystick. Please don't lean on me. I'm not a piece of furniture.
Right.
That happens all the time. So I have to keep educating. But I try to do it in a way where I don't want to make somebody really uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And that's just the best I can do. And then hopefully that kind of plants a seed, so the next encounter they have is a little bit easier.
Do you feel like it's a burden to have to educate along the way? And
No.
It seems like the onus is on you to. People aren't going out and learning about this stuff, so that you know what I mean. But I don't know. I just didn't know. If
I don't think it's. I don't look at it as a burden. I look at it as just part of just my life now. Yeah. It's just an extension of what I have to do. And I've had to tell complete strangers, like, can you please, like, not lean on me? I'm not and it's uncomfortable, right. And I try, like, it's just, you don't want me leaning on you, like. Yeah. You don't just come up to somebody who you just met, you start leaning on them. Like, you just don't. So, but, I don't think it's a burden at all. I just, if I can help make somebody be better in their next encounter, and to be more comfortable when talking with all types of people, no matter if they're disabled or not, then it's fine.
So I know we have a limited amount of time, so I just want to sort of dig into like some of the things that really affected me in the film. To see the support from complete strangers that you guys had on the journey was something that I was very moved by, because in taking care of my brother with my mom and I, it's just the two of us. It's lonely and it's very hard, and you feel like you're doing this work by yourself, and that there's no support. You have no community. It's very isolating, and just to see that was inspiring. It was hope. I was like, like somebody. There's hope out there that we can find something like that. Some group of people who understand that it takes more than one to people, to take care of everyone. And it's not just, this one specific person that needs help, but we all do. And I also want, I guess I'm asking about that in contrast to getting home. Mm-hmm. And you're on this trip and you have people you don't know who are assisting you on this journey. And then you get home, and I imagine the situation is very different, where you're not having strangers help you in the same way that you did on the journey.
Right.
Do you know what I'm asking?
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? And if it is true, how do you handle that? How do you handle having a glimpse, a taste of something that could be, and then confronted with maybe a daily reality that, man, it isn't there.
Right.
You want to take this one?
Yeah. One thing that makes the Camino a very different dynamic is that there's so much that's stripped away that people are. I think they have a better understanding because there's no distractions in the day to day of their capacity to love and who God calls them to be, what they're created to be. And in the day to day, when we get back home, there's more distractions. There's work, there's family, there's sporting events for kids, there's all these different things that begin to occupy the space in our brain where we become somewhat disengaged from that capacity to love. And what we've found as a collective when we travel, and even in our day-to-day with our friends and strangers we meet at, newcomers to church, whatever it might be, is that we have to be a vehicle to try and pursue that element of breaking down the impact of the distractions. And we can do a lot of that by who we choose to be in our day-to-day interactions. And it's hard, it's work, it is sometimes very painful, but when we really pursue loving relationships, loving engagement, even with strangers, it offers more opportunities for that to happen. It doesn't happen to the degree it does in the Camino, by no means. Just because there's not the sheer number of people around you in the day-to-day. But there is a shift you see happen when you start to press into those relationships, and it's almost like when you pursue someone, even just an authentic, loving hello, an embrace of someone that you've just met and they're struggling with something, or just a new conversation in a hallway at work, whatever it might be, there begins to be a space where certain questions and certain answers are more welcomed, and is a cascading effect to where those kind of situations where Justin does need help, people are much more inclined to engage. And unfortunately, a lot of that onus is back on us, but at the end of the day, it's on all of us to pursue relationships that way anyway. But it's hard.
And I would venture to say that there are probably small... you don't have the grand, epic moment, right? But there are small ways that I've observed, where it might be just holding a door open, or it may be, hey, can I go get that at the store for you? Or reaching out to Kirsten, Justin's wife, and saying, hey, can we have a girls' weekend? Those are like the little ways in which help shows up that isn't necessarily so direct and epic.
Literally carrying someone.
Exactly. But those moments show up all the time. And then I would also say, though, too, some of the bad habits we get into in terms of not feeling worthy enough to have people help, not wanting to burden others. I have a friend who was post-polio. He has been for 60 years. And, after he watched the film, was really challenged and confronted with the fact that, he didn't want people opening the doors for him. He wanted to get his own coffee. He wanted, he only has use of one arm and very limited use of that. But his wall or his armor is trying to keep people out of that. Yeah. So, I think that there are the small ways that show up all the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you touched on something, one of the other big things that I wanted to talk about, because it personally, I think, spoke to me. The scene at I believe it's the Iron Crosses, as it's called, where where you leave, you leave something, and your burden in particular is something that really resonated with me. As someone who has been a caretaker of my brother, and I'm certain my mom must feel the same way. it's really, really, really difficult. It's hard to explain unless somebody is in that situation and can understand. It's really hard to let go of that. It's really hard to let other people help, to not always be the one that has to do. Like, I have to do it myself. It's just, I don't want to burden anyone else with it. Like, the burden is mine. I will carry it, even if it breaks me.
Yeah.
And so to see the scene, like the scene that sticks out to me the most, actually, is I think it was immediately after that, where all this group of people are pushing you up this hill, and you're walking in front, and you're not at all, like, you're not part of the group that's helping him, and that just felt so. I don't know. I felt this huge release there, because that moment you were allowing someone else to help you in the way that I imagine, and you can speak to this maybe. I imagine it was difficult at first to feel like you couldn't do anything, and then you had to rely on other people for everything that you needed to do.
Right.
So I don't know, just to see that play out in that way, man, that was really, really powerful for me, because that's something I really, really struggle with. I know my mom struggles with it too. To allow someone else, to trust someone else enough to be able to take over, does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And for Justin to ask me about just doing the journey to begin with, it was a demonstration of a remarkable amount of trust he was placing in me, right? I mean, that's a huge honor that I'll cherish that moment in his house until the day I die, when he asked me, "Do you want to go across 500 miles to northern Spain?" I mean, it's almost like a divine moment where, of course, I want to do this. But on the journey, and we were talking about on Osabrero, when I'm away from the chair. I'm not, like, it's the first day I'm truly not at the helm.
You don't even have a pack on.
Nothing.
Somebody else is carrying his pack.
Completely unburdened, if you will. In order for me to fulfill what I wanted to fulfill for Justin, I had to do that, because there's no way I would have been able to get him to Santiago. There's no way. And it's really, it's been a reminder for me in my life in general. I mean, letting that burden go basically is control. It's, for the longest time, my perverted sense of safety has been grounded in control. If I can control it, I'm safe. But if I can control it, I'm limited to what I can experience. And if I control it, I am limited in what I can actually offer my friends, my wife, my kids, anybody I encounter. And so in that moment when I'm finally, like, free of so much, I'm able just to walk. And even though we're moving, I'm resting both physically and emotionally. There's this wave of, okay, I can give so much more to Justin if I allow people to give to me. And that's a lesson that we all struggle with. Probably me more than most. But it has to happen in order to move effectively through life. It has to.
And I would say that, what's relatable about that is, and I'm not going to speak for you, but, like, our identity gets wrapped up in what we're capable of doing, and what we've been assigned to do, or what we've assigned ourselves to do. And so somehow we're giving up some of our identity. And I think it opens us up to realize how much more we actually are when we're not controlling the identity.
Yes. Terry, I think that's beautifully said, because we are wrapped up in our identity being what we can do, when really our identity, I think about our identity in Christ, our identity in a community is, what can we do as a collective? How can we, there's so much more power in working together than there is as an individual on every front. Yet we want to be this little island of one individual who strives to the top, and fights their way, and the just a weird idea of, I am all I need to be, and that's a really quick path to failure.
Right, and that's I think what Justin's point in the film, when he talks about, would I change this? Would love change, and would life change? And I'm not so sure I would change that, because what a gift to be able to, see that more clearly than those of us perhaps that are struggling with our identity of being able to control it all.
Yeah. So what's your perspective on all this? Because I imagine it's slightly different, being that you sort of had your hand was forced in a way. You know, you gave up a lot of control, not out of choice, but out of circumstances that beyond.
Yeah, there's actually it's a two-sided coin, because yes, in many ways I've had to I've been forced to, due to the disability that I have, the disease that I have, and I've had to rely on others to literally carry me through life and feed me and and all that, and it is a muscle that I've had to learn how to flex over time. And it's not like, I always say, like, it's not a switch you just turn on one day. It's moment by moment. It's year in, year out, and you have to keep at it. But then what I think, when it's talking to identity and it's talking to how I interpret that, is freedom. And the freedom, okay, when I'm in my power chair that I'm sitting in right now, I have independence. I have freedom to go where I mostly can go and do where I want to go. If I want to pivot, I can go. It's the freedom that I have. It's one of the very few things that I have left that I can do. While I'm in my off-road chair on the Camino, I have zero freedom. Zero. 100% trust in anybody who is pushing me and pulling me. And it took a lot for me to get there. But about halfway through the journey, maybe a little bit more, Pat and I were in a cafe, and it finally dawned on me. I'm in this chair. I think it was after probably the third or fourth time Pat put me in timeout.
Yeah, sorry.
We always joke that, because in our book you'll understand if you read it, but it's Pat would put me in timeout. He didn't know he was doing it. He would, because I'm in my chair, I can't propel myself or do anything. So we'd stop into a cafe, get food, and he would just be so focused on getting whatever he's getting, he would just park me in a corner, and I'm just like sitting in the corner. I'm like, Pat, put me in timeout again. He's like, oh crap, sorry about that. And he'd turn me around so I can actually see everyone. But after a few times of that happening, and us joking through that, it finally dawned on me. I just had this realization that, okay, I gave up my independence, all of it, 100%. And I'm in this chair that I cannot do anything. I'm relying upon other people to get me from point A to point B to Z. And then I realized that by giving up my independence, I gained way more freedom. I was able to climb mountains and do things I never thought I could do. And it's in that realization that I realized, it's kind of another cementing stone for me. Sombrero really cemented it for me. But I can do so much more by letting people carry me and getting me through life. And there is a fine line in there, because I just met you. Not so sure I'd have you help me in the bathroom quite yet. I've known Pat for a long time. He's the vice president of my inner circle. So, he helps me in the bathroom and stuff like that. Knowing that you probably help your brother and do all that, I might be a little bit more, if it came down to it, be like, all right, Nathan, let's do it, brother. It's going to get down and dirty. But I've always focused on the end goal. Why I'm doing something, the condition of my heart. Like, why do I want to do something? And yes, I'm forced to, in many ways, to rely on other people to live, but it goes way beyond that. It's, having a best friend willing to say yes and jump in with me and say, all right, let's go achieve this dream together. And let's have this, we don't know if we're going to make it, but we're going to at least try. And, and then to open up that trust, and then for Patrick to let go of his control at the pinnacle of climbing with Sombrero is a monumental shift in him, which allows him to now live more free. It's a really cool thing. And I see that happening. It's all from my vantage point. It's like this crazy ripple effect, and I describe it when we were climbing Osabura, I have 6 people carrying me, literally carrying me up a mountain, picking me up and carrying me, and I'm floating up this mountain. It's crazy. Like, it's hard for me to explain it, but I describe it as like this beautiful human symphony. People coming in and out of your life and picking up the burden. Letting their burdens down so they can pick up somebody else's.
Mm-hmm. Right, and if you play that out to its like logical conclusion, you're like, okay, so there's somebody at the bottom of the rung who's doing all the work, right. But it's more circular than that because what he said is if you lay down your burden to pick up somebody else's, then we're all kind of doing that because it's really a matter of this is the area I'm not strong in, this is the area I am strong in. Mm-hmm. So I can pick up that.
Yeah.
This other thing I'm having real trouble picking up.
Yeah.
So it's more of a circular thing.
Yeah.
I have done. I do a lot of backpacking and hiking, and I was talking to somebody yesterday about this. Actually, they were saying something about like, it's about the journey, not the destination. One of those.
Yeah.
Sure. And
what are those memes?
Yeah, and I realized, wow, you know what? I do a lot of hiking and backpacking. I'm like, I actually hate the journey. I hate it. When I'm hiking, I'm in the middle of it. I'm sweaty and I'm hot. And I'm climbing up a mountain or something. I'm like, oh my god, how much further? Are we just there yet? Like, are we done? And then I get to the top and I'm resting. I'm like, okay, I'm glad I did it. While I was doing it, I hated it. But now that it's over, I'm glad that I've done that. What was your perspective while you were doing it? What was going through your? I imagine there was a lot of boredom, a lot of
really sucky parts.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. But there's so many moments throughout the journey that there's just sheer magic. I mean, there's no way to describe the joy and the euphoria, if you will, that you experience in certain relationships or certain moments of success, overcoming whatever obstacle it might be, or just the sheer time with Justin and I walking together, or strangers, and the level of vulnerability and just rawness that you get to experience with people through the journey. Yeah, there were some hard times, but those moments, I mean, I would take those over arriving in Santiago almost every single time. I mean, I miss my wife. I want to see her desperately.
Yeah, that's why I rephrase that. No. Don't let her hear this.
No. She'll appreciate this. Is that, I mean, I wanted to see her, and that was definitely, I mean, that's one of the destinations. But the journey itself, just the journey and getting to Santiago, seeing my family again, out of that equation, just the journey itself, those moments where I got to experience real, raw intimacy with sometimes complete strangers, that was incredible.
I'll add to that in the sense that I did walk the journey with them, and sometimes with them and sometimes a little ahead of them. And they say that when you walk the Camino, that the Camino will reflect back to you, what you need to see.
Mm-hmm.
It will either manifest in its body, it will show up in the stories that kind of emerge either with other pilgrims or with the circumstances or the elements. And maybe it's not about the journey, but there's certainly rich with opportunity to have those epiphany moments where this experience is informing me about myself and about how I move through the world. It's kind of like your own personal allegory you get to dissect about what's going on. Yeah. So.
I'm trying to think about how to phrase this. So this was a pilgrimage. This is a pilgrimage. How long ago was this when you guys did it?
June 14.
Okay.
Yeah. May, June, and July of 14.
Okay, so looking from where you are now, how do you understand that aspect of what you did? How does it being a pilgrimage change the way that you look at it? I mean, I was the desire to do this, spiritual in nature. Has that changed over time?
One more question if you got.
Yeah.
All right. It's I mean, I would probably say we didn't go into it saying I'm seeking spiritual enlightenment. out of this thing. I'd probably say that the pilgrimage is very unique for everyone who goes on it. And they're all either seeking or maybe non-seeking something or nothing. And for us, it was, kind of going back to the moment when I learned about it watching Rick Steves on Rick Steves Europe. It was, I just knew in my heart and my soul and my mind, and I describe it that the Camino called me. It just said, okay, you need to go do this. I just knew in my heart, just is this really strong pull that I need to do it. And up until, I'm not a backpacker. I'm not really, I'm happy sitting on a beach, sipping a margarita, whatever. But, I was like, okay, all right. And then, when Patrick said he would push me, I was like, okay, we're going to give this a shot. And many moments of trepidation, fear, stress, like you name it, all the gamut. This is even before we went. But looking back, kind of going through it, looking back, I would say that, it's definitely has changed my perspective on life for sure. It's made it a little bit more clear because the pilgrimage itself is a great metaphor for life. Without a doubt. You have your hills, your valleys, your mountains, your hard times, your good times, time alone, time with people, time with strangers. And it's meant for you to suffer. And you do. You suffer. To a certain degree, no matter when and how long you walk, you suffer. And now that I look back, I can go, okay, it's just a reminder that we're going to have those moments in life that are not going to be fun. You're going to have those moments in life that are beautiful and amazing. And it helps kind of makes you cherish all of it. It's the best way I can say it.
Yeah. For me, it just shifted my perspective on faith and on God, and ultimately, I guess, kind of the church as well. We both grew up in fairly religious homes, and there was a perspective shift where, you experience so much raw relationship on the Camino, and really it's a reminder of how much opportunity there is in your daily life to experience real raw relationship that we just let pass us by because we're distracted. But if we can engage in that and choose relationship, choose that kind of life, choose love as a motivation for what we do, there's just so much more beauty, there's so much more magic in that. And for me, it was moving from a position of kind of questioning what is religion, who is God, how does this all kind of relate to understanding that, okay, if I believe in this Jesus character and he stands for love, and I want to live a life of love, what does that look like? It means I have to choose relationship over religion every single time. And love has to be the motivation for all my decisions. And not that it is, because I'm a flawed individual, and there's many times I fail, but the moments when I do choose that, and that is the motivation for how I engage with whoever it might be that's right in front of me, it completely changes the dynamic, and we're able to be a point where heaven gets to intersect with earth. And that's it.
That's so funny you said intersect, because the image that keeps coming back to me is the image of the scallop shell and all the lines. And they say, this is like the converging parts of the, where all the roads of the Camino lead to Santiago. I would say that it's also the points at which we all come to understand that what really matters is love.
Yeah.
And I think Ted, said it beautifully in the film. At the end, because there is an end. We all are going to have an end. Justin was facing an end, earlier than most. We're all going to face an end. But the place we come to at the end of this journey is what matters along the way is the love that people we have around us.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
This has been wonderful.